Oh, here we are again. Welcome back, everybody. Square the Circle Music Channel. My name is Aaron. You're back here again. You're stuck with me. We're talking circles and squares like we always do. Gonna do a little fun continuation episode tonight. This is part two, episode two of one of the favorite things that I've done so far on all these YouTube videos is a little bit of shit talking. Everyone loves a little bit of shit talking, don't they? And in all fairness, I don't really do a lot of actual shit talking. I just use this as a forum and use this as a little bit of a time to air and express my unpopular opinion about certain subjects and certain musicians or bands or classifications therein, that type of thing. Nothing is straight up or outwardly hateful or really any real shit talking. It's usually just kind of some fun banter, and a lot of people disagree with the things that I say, and that's fine. A lot of this stuff is all very, very subjective, and that's what music allows us, is it's able to be interpreted in numerous different ways, right? So like I said, this is episode 2 of Major's Unpopular Opinion, because that's me. And sometimes I have some things in my head that just don't go with the common, everyday, collective, idea of what people, like to, just consider commonplace. So I guess I'll just jump right into it. Tonight I'm going to talk about 10 albums, in my opinion, that are prog but not prog, if you know what I mean. I talk about progressive rock a lot, and I'm not going to profess to be any sort of professor of or wizard of, or I don't know everything about it. It just happens to be one of my favorite genres. And I don't really get in any real conversations or arguments with anybody about this, because I don't know anybody that really likes progressive rock as much as I do. I don't really have a lot of friends anymore, and we don't really talk about music much, and we all, we've got kids and we've got jobs and whatever. But when I do have conversations online with people or whatever, a lot of people just have these kind of everyday epithets of what they deem progressive rock, and a lot of times I'm kind of just like, you call that prog? And so I wanted to do a little bit of a shit talking top 10 video of bands that are prog not prog, bands that everyone says fall into that progressive ilk, and I very honestly, I don't agree a lot of the time. So here's one right off the cuff that I've talked about before, and that a lot of people, more often than not, most people are kind of on the fence whether they deem this band to be a true prog band or not. I say nay, simply because I think they're far easier to categorize in some of the more kind of garden variety musical genres. So, of course, I'm talking about the band Pink Floyd. Probably, arguably, definitely one of the greatest rock bands of all time. And I've gone as far as to say recently that they're probably my favorite rock band of all time. I wouldn't say my favorite rock band of time. I think they're, in my opinion, the greatest rock band of all time. Anyway, a lot of people like to lump them into that progressive category, and I can't agree with it a lot of the times. I'm not taking away from them. They're, of course, monumentally amazing. I already said that. I just really think because a lot of where their career began and a lot of what they do is based and rooted in blues and blues rock. And they didn't really gain a lot of, I'm sure they probably gained inspiration from, but you don't really get it from listening to their music, especially the early stuff. They don't really have a lot of those telltale signs that progressive giants and who wrote the book on the genre really were taking from those, things. We're talking symphonic music, jazz music, and all those elements of like, medieval style music and just all that stuff. That's what makes progressive rock. I mean, not solely, but those are really kind of like the biggest aspects, in my opinion, of what makes a band progressive and what was happening in the late 60s, mid to late 60s, specifically in their region of the world. So they were kind of lumped into that category, but they were really just like a psychedelic rock, blues band. So I really can't get on that train when people like to say these guys are prog. I just don't call them prog. I call them psychedelic rock, art rock, all of the above. But they really don't fall into that category of prog, in my opinion. So sorry, everybody. Pink Floyd is prog, but not prog. IMO. So that's that one. I'm sure a lot of you folks that watch my channel were kind of expecting this to just pop right up. So there it is. Next on the list, another one that might get a little bit of people kind of like raising their eyebrows and kind of saying, now really, dude? Talking about the very famous Jethro Tull. In my opinion, Jethro Tull, same kind of concept of what I was just talking about with Pink Floyd. These guys, kind of coming out of that like late 60s, early 70s, and yeah, they really took the folksy, symphonic kind of realm and sound, but it just really, Ian Anderson and company, just all the riffing on the flute and all like the kind of like medieval style and stuff like that. Like I get that, but it doesn't really go any deeper than that. It's just a constant riffing on the flute, and all of the rock and roll is very, very bluesy and very, very just kind of like, quintessential stereotypical 60s psychedelic rock. And it just kind of really never went any further, and took any new shapes or took any new like, colors or ideas. It was just kind of like the same old, playing on the same idea, and just with lots of fun riffage on the flute by Ian Anderson, and just never, in my opinion, never really progressed beyond just what they did with their first couple of albums. It was just kind of the same sound, the same idea over and over and over again. And ironically, the one album that was kind of like a game changer for them, that was supposed to be, something that was like, ooh, wow, this really is progressive and it's different and it's, conceptual and it's beautiful. It's the Thick as a Brick album, was simply just kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of like mocking and making fun of the genre and kind of making fun of themselves, because people were starting to want to lump them into that category of progressive. And it's just like, in my opinion, I just truly don't feel that they were anything progressive, honestly. They just kind of like one trick pony, and they rode that fucking pony. They rode that pony for 35, 40 years, all the way up until like that whole debacle in like the 90s, when they ended up winning awards in the hard rock metal category over like Metallica or something. I don't remember all that hoopla, but I was blown away. I remember being a teenager and, watching Jethro Tull win a hard rock award over a band like Metallica, who was just like, on top of the world at the time. And I was just like, what? I just don't understand why people call these guys progressive. Yeah, the Thick as a Brick album, it can be constituted as being kind of like in that realm, but for me, that's kind of it. People will talk about Passion Play, and they'll talk about a lot of those types of things, and like I said, I think it's just more or less just more of the same of what they had always been doing, and just riffing on the same ideas and the same concepts, and not really like breaking through, pushing boundaries. And to me, that's another element of progressive rock that I really truly feel defines the that genre. So yeah, I can't get on board with the Jethro Tull being a prog band. So sorry guys, prog not prog. So yeah, there's that. So there's the first two. I'm sure I've got you a little bit confused, or maybe fuming. People kind of really, not really understanding where I'm coming from, but I'm trying to do my best to kind of explain myself and my opinion and my thought process here. So maybe kind of like go over some of their albums and go over some of their music again, and like in a new light, and kind of be like, well, they're a kick-ass band, and what they do in that little realm of what they do is pretty rad, but I don't think I'd categorize it truly as progressive. So here's another one I've talked about before. I'm going to talk about again. A lot of folks can't agree with me on this one, and I just say fuck you. They're not a prog band. They're not a prog band. Look at where they started out. Look at what they were doing in whenever this came out, probably 70, I think, 71, something like that. I'm not sure. I'm not the hugest Rush fan. I'm not really a Rush fan. I think some of their later albums, 79 and 80, like Signals and Moving Pictures, are fucking dope. I think that's the kind of like realm where they belonged, where they found their sound and they found their idea and concepts of what they were doing. And everything before that was just kind of like, just a lot of goofy, kind of like sophomoric, kind of experimental, just rock, just hard rock. They're a fucking hard rock band. They're not a prog band. And yeah, they dabble in sounds and ideas and concepts, but again, folks, that's not something that strictly constitutes a band as being a progressive band, in my opinion. There's lots of experimental bands out there that we don't call prog. There's lots of hard rock bands that, enter elements of, interesting, time signatures and interesting sounds and conceptual ideas and whatever. I mean, they're just an artsy hard rock band from that time and, not place. They're, American or Canadian, sorry, a Canadian band. So they didn't really jump on that train they weren't on the train. They were too young for like the UK Canterbury and all that stuff. They were heavily, heavily inspired by that. And that you can tell they were just kind of like ripping off bits and pieces from all that shit that they loved, hugely inspired by Yes and hugely inspired by just all that stuff. So yeah, like I said, I love and respect Rush for what they gave the world. I'm just not going to say that they're a fucking prog band, and I never will. I don't think they're progressive. They're a hard rock band. They were doing what a lot of other groups were doing at the same time. They were touring with fucking Kiss. They were touring with whoever they could get to take them on the road. Yeah, and some of their nerdy subject matter and this and that, but like I said, I don't really think that that's like what makes you a prog band, because you have a couple of moments of some like synthesizer and you're talking about fucking Lord of the Rings and like, Ayn Rand novels and just whatever the fuck. Like sorry guys, they're not a progressive band. They're just not. So moving along in that same ilk, same period in time, and in my opinion, a very similar sounding band. When I was a young child growing up listening to the radio, the bands that I heard on the radio were bands like Rush and this band who sounds a lot fucking like Rush, Supertramp. And yeah, same idea. Definitely not as much of a hard rock band as Rush, but Supertramp. A lot of people just like, I've heard people categorize these guys as progressive rock, and I'm just like, fucking what? Supertramp? Whatever, dude. They're totally not a prog band. Yeah, I mean, they're just one of the more like radio friendly kind of pop rock. Like, I dig them. I really fucking like Supertramp a lot. I think they're great, but they're most certainly not a artistically driven, symphonic and jazz inspired, heady, creative, artsy band. They're just not. They're a straight up piano rock pop band. The likes of what was popular at the time, like fucking Elton John and whatever else. They're just kind of a glammy pop rock band. So yeah, I can't get on board with this one, everyone. I've seen these guys and people mention and they're one of my favorite prog. Not prog. Sorry guys, they're not prog. So that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. So let's keep on moving on down the line here. So maybe some of you agree with me, maybe some of you don't. That's fine. Like I said, this is all subjective. Music is in the the ears of the beholder. But certain things really can be, and since we've had such an agreement for so many decades of like really what constitutes, certain musical ideologies and musical genres, like there's just certain things you can't get away with. Certain bands you just can't get away with calling them a metal band, or you can't get away with calling them jazz, or whatever. It's like I take this just as seriously because prog is such an important part of musical history, and it's like I feel as passionate about it as like those fucking dipshit metalheads, like metal as a way of life type of dudes that just like it's not fucking metal, like I don't want nothing to do with it. I feel kind of the same way. It's like don't try to put that shit into my prog category. But whatever, I digress. I'll just keep on plowing through here. Here's one that baffles me again because they're just a kick-ass hard rock band. I've heard people classify Uriah Heep so many times as being a prog band, but more often than not, most people, when they say it, they kind of backtrack and kind of like correct themselves a little bit, like, well, they're maybe not that type of prog. It's like, okay, dude, like they're not progressive at all, like not even in the least. Like just talk about like your run-of-the-mill dirty nasty stinky fucking dudes from the 70s. Just like Uriah Heep sounds like a dirty bong smells, you know what I mean? Like that's if that makes any sense. Like to me, Uriah Heep is just kind of like the stinky puddle of bong water that somebody spilt on the carpet and never cleaned up. You know what I mean? That's just like, that's what Uriah Heep's music reminds me of and sounds like. Like there's nothing to it, in my opinion, that could remotely be, categorized or construed or, put into that category of anything based in, the beauties of symphonic music, or the marvels of jazz music, or any of that. Like I don't know, these guys, I mean, sorry, I'm not meaning to be hateful if there's some dudes out there and some people, women, whatever, that love Uriah Heep, but I think they fucking suck. I certainly don't understand why people classify them as prog. So they just had to be on my list. I dig some of the artwork. Some of the album art was kind of cool. I don't know if maybe that was something that Roger Dean was involved in. It's very Roger Dean-esque. So I don't know. They just seemed like they were really trying to just kind of like scoop up anything they could market themselves with from the popularity of everything in the 70s. The popularity, I mean, of all the stuff that was progressive in nature. It seemed to me like they were just kind of like ripping it all off. Like, let's try to rip off these sounds, or let's try to rip off this artwork, or let's dress this way, or whatever. I don't know. They were just a dirty butthole rock band. Like, I heard somewhere that I think that's these guys are who inspired Spinal Tap. The guy who wrote Spinal Tap and starred in Spinal Tap, what was his name? Christopher something. Anyway, he wrote all those great movies and performed in all those great movies. And he was in Spinal Tap, and I think that these guys were the inspiration for the Spinal Tap guys. So after seeing that movie and then seeing some of the live performances of these guys, it's like, yeah, you totally, you piece it together in the correlations. And it's just kind of like the beginning of just like hair metal, just cock rock. Like they're just like the early stages of proto cock rock to me. So yeah, I'll stop talking shit about Uriah Heep. Sorry, everybody. And just in that same vein, I mean, not really the same vein, but just kind of like almost the same period in rock and roll history. I can't get on board with these guys. Sorry, everybody. Just super lame nerd music from the late 70s, early 80s. There's some aspects of Styx that I really, really like. They're just so safe. You know what I mean? Such a safe band. Sometimes just so milquetoast and just boring as fuck, Come Sail Away and just all that, blah, But there's a few hits that are pretty dope, the You're Fooling Yourself, the song about the young man, and I don't know. use your what was the name of that one? The Grand Illusion. The Grand Illusion has a few good songs on it. But yeah, I can't get on board with all you chuckleheads, all you guys from the late 70s, early 80s that, talking like these guys kind of like took on the helm and kind of like the continuation of, the prog greats of the, late 60s, early 70s, mid 70s, and Styx kind of just took on that and just kept going with it, and it was like, nah, dude, what a safe, boring, kind of pathetic excuse for what would be deemed as progressive rock, I guess. They're just soft, they're straight up soft rock. Yeah, so can't get on board with that one, folks. Sorry, not Prog. All right, we're getting down to the last few here, everybody. Again, thanks for tuning in to my silly little channel. We're going to keep on cruising here with my unpopular opinion. So I hope you're enjoying yourselves. I sure am. I'll get back to it. Here's another one in the same wheelhouse. I think is Styx, kind of that early to mid 80s sound of just kind of the really safe, kind of just soft rock. The audacity of people when they classify this as prog, I'm just like, what what planet are you from? And it's just like I said, those dudes from were in high school, like in the late 70s, and early 80s that just were like, loved the early prog scene and just wanted to kind of romanticize it and keep it running, and just like this stuff was just kind of like in that real safe, kind of like boring, happy little sound, the kind of, I don't know. And because Steve Howe played guitar, and because, who else? Sorry. Was Greg Lake? No. This was John Wetton. Wasn't John Wetton in this band? Yeah, super band, Asia, from the early 80s. Y'all remember Asia. They had one big, super huge radio hit. It escapes me right now. I can't remember the name of the song. But so Steve Howe played guitar, and John Wetton was singing and probably playing bass. And I don't know, this was like kind of a bit of a super group, and they just had that one hit wonders, and they made a couple albums, so they did something right. But like I said, just kind of like, I don't know, just that kind of safe, straight up radio rock of the early 80s. Nothing special. I don't get it why people would even think to classify these guys as being anything progressive, when the shit that was going on in the same era of the early 80s, early to mid 80s, was like so much more groundbreaking, and there was so much better music happening. And because these guys were just kind of like of that, the Latter-day Saints of Prog, they were kind of just keeping on the good path. They were trying, but it ended up just being really kitschy, and just kind of not great. Certainly not progressive. So please don't call Asia prog rock, folks. It really isn't. And on the flip side of this bad boy, this is another huge one that a lot of people continually classify in progressive rock and lump into that category. And sometimes I can kind of see where people are coming from, but on that teetering on the edge of the symphonic rock, which is, yes, a kind of a daughter/son category to the parent category of progressive rock, you have kind of symphonic rock down there, and there's a lot of elements of ELO that I can really say, yes, there's some huge symphonic inspirations in there, but nothing they're doing with that sound or that idea that spans their entire discography and their entire career. I mean, fuck, Jeff Lynne's still making ELO albums, isn't he? I don't know, maybe, but they never really go anywhere, do anything spectacular or progressive with it. They take the sounds of the strings and the symphonic chamber kind of elements that he adds to his you know, popular piano rock of the 70s, you know, disco music in a sense. A lot of it is dance music and disco music, and kind of injects this, you know, little bit of symphonic element to it, and just kind of like, it's a fun little like hodgepodge of ideas. But in my opinion, like I said, it's nothing more than just kind of like popular piano rock and shit that you would hear in a fucking roller rink, or, you know, just on the radio, stuff you'd hear in a dance club. It was just popular music. And let's be cut and dry here. There's nothing about progressive rock that has ever been popular. It's never even remotely been on the same side of the table as the word or term popular. And that's another huge part about progressive rock that defines it, is that it's never been and never will be of a popular, you know, status. It's for the people, and for it, I don't want to get shitty and condescending here. I have a hard time. But in my opinion, progressive music, and progressive rock especially, all progressive music, is for the not faint at heart, if that makes any sense. It's for, not for the wayward listener. It's not for people. I'm not saying that only musicians can appreciate and love progressive music. That's not what I'm getting at, because I know a lot of people who are not naturally predisposed to being a musician or understanding musicianship. I know a lot of people that love and appreciate and really get it and really respect progressive music. But I'm just saying, it's just not for the wayward listener. It's just not. And it takes a lot of thought, and it takes a lot of spirit and love to really like delve into what progressive music has to offer. And otherwise, it just gets kind of just like mulled over, and you know, you have just kind of like the radio hits that people can just kind of like click into and somewhat appreciate, and then you have like, you know, the 4-minute radio version of, you know, Roundabout by Yes, you know, and it's like, that's basically the extent that people can really like get on board with it, you know, what's highly palatable for the masses. And progressive music has just never been something palatable for the masses, and it never will be. And like, give me a break, you know what I mean? People call this progressive rock, and it's just like, dude, this is just like for the masses. It was intended for the masses. It was intended to be played on the radio. You know, these guys were making music with the intention of selling platinum albums. I mean, you know, all artists want to go platinum, but yeah, I don't need to get too more heady about this. And I'm not a hater. There's lots of aspects of ELO that I love. I just can't get on board with it, guys. They're not fucking prog. Fucking get it through your thick skulls. ELO is not a prog band. Their first album was kind of dancing with elements of, but that's just because they came from that time and place, and that's just kind of what was around, and that was what was kind of like in the air. And then after that first album, it was just like, obviously they just want to be a fucking radio band, and that's what they became. So they put out a lot of great work. Eldorado's fantastic. Time is another fantastic album. Lots of great work, but just not progressive. Not a prog band. Sorry, guys. All right, getting down to the last little bit of it here. These last two, kind of, I guess I wouldn't say I was on the fence about these, but I've heard people call these guys, both of them, prog, and I just simply can't agree with it. They don't fall. They may kind of like embrace one or two aspects of like progressive music, but then there's just too many other aspects that they just kind of like fall short, and they just kind of don't embody. They don't embody enough of the elements and enough of the spirit that, in my opinion, truly makes a band progressive. So one of those bands, of course, being Soft Machine. Feckin' amazing group. If any of you have never listened to Soft Machine, please immediately go out and get all their stuff. Their early career, I think it was like probably their first album was like in '68. I think it was self-titled. Really great album, really unique, interesting. Kind of a lot of the the concepts and ideas similar of what you were hearing from like early Pink Floyd, but more of kind of a jazz element, like aspects of like what you were hearing from the Moody Blues. Yeah, just really cool psychedelic, very avant style kind of shit. And then you could sense where they were coming from and what their school of learning was kind of like the jazz school. And as their albums progressed throughout the late 60s and the early 70s, the jazz just totally took hold. And then you just have this, band that really embraced and fell into this insanely cool avant jazz rock type of fold. Super fucking excellent band. Love them to death. So definitely not shit talking about these guys. I just don't. I've heard people call them prog. Maybe coming from what they were doing in, like I said, their very, very early career, their first album, and then a little bit more into like their middle to late-ish career. In my opinion, why I can hear people would construe and kind of lump them into that category would be the Bundles album. If anyone hasn't heard their album Bundles, that's a fantastic fucking album. Really cool. A little bit more of kind of like the softer experimental. There's some real ambient shit in it. There's some real just like really cool subtle moments that don't really like, it doesn't feel like a jazz album. It doesn't feel like what they were doing was like this really intense kind of like psychedelic jazz. So but yeah, check out Bundles. It's fucking sick. Soft Machine, incredible band. Just not a prog band. So I wish people wouldn't say they are. They just really, they found what they were good at and they did it. They weren't really like doing anything more than that. If they would have like from Bundles, if they would have really like taken a left turn, and really gone into some new kind of like sonic space at that point, I would say, okay, they turned into kind of like a really impressive, progressive group. But no, they just kind of kept it real and kind of kept doing what they were made for. So, pretty sick band though. So, everyone check out Soft Machine. Love them to death. Gonna end it with one of my favorite bands of all time, and another one of those I get a little bit baffled when people categorize them as being a prog band. I don't think I've ever, again, I said this before about someone else, but when people say they're prog, they always kind of inevitably kind of like, well, take two steps back, and like some of what they do could be like construed as being progressive, right? Because they were really, yes, okay, you're right. As far as electronica, krautrock, what was happening in the world at that period in time in the late 60s, they were incredibly groundbreaking. This is Tangerine Dream, talking about Tangerine Dream. I love the shit out of these guys. When it comes to electronic, Berlin school, what the Krauts are really good for and known for. Really just, they really tickle my fancy, and I love everything that they do. I cherish their whole discography, and it's all just amazing. Yes, groundbreaking. Yes, thought-provoking, and sonically just riveting. They take it to all kinds of magnificent places, but it's still just electronic music, and it never became any more than that. And when you're talking like what their capabilities and what they're doing sonically with like, the machines, the synthesizers and the stuff they're using, it kind of puts them in a box. Kind of hard to be a progressive band when you're living your life, or when you're, in your own little kind of paradigm. You know what I mean? Your own little musical paradigm. And when you're an electronic band, it's just kind of like you're in there, and that's it. And you've got this 3D space of walls to bounce stuff off of, and it's still fan fucking tastic, but that's it. You're locked into your own realm. And I think that that's what Tangerine Dream did, and they did it really fucking well, and they still are doing it. I'm pretty sure, like Klaus Schultz and Edgar Fries and all those guys, I'm pretty sure that they're still making music in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not under the umbrella of the Tangerine Dream name, but I know that they've got to be, composing film music or doing something. They're probably in their fucking late 70s by now, but who knows? An incredible band, a force to be reckoned with, highly inspirational for generations now of music makers. But I really have to kind of cringe a little bit and kind of raise the eyebrows when I see, anywhere on like a music board website or even on like Discogs. I've looked up albums of theirs on Discogs, and under it, it'll say, electronic krautrock, prog rock, and I'm just like, what? Nah, definitely not progressive. So what they did was groundbreaking, and what they're still doing, and we all cherish and love them. But like I said, within the confines of their own little musical paradigm, like they had that space to work with, and it never really took on any new form or new light. It was always just kick ass. It was always really recognizable, really easy to kind of like pinpoint, like that's definitely Tangerine Dream. That's one of my favorite things about progressive rock, is sometimes you hear these bands that you may have grown accustomed to, and suddenly you don't even recognize them anymore. Some of those greats from the 60s and 70s, and then you hear them in the 80s, and they're still the same band, but they sound completely different. That's what makes them unique. That's what makes them truly progressive, is that they just don't stop. They keep going. They keep reinventing. They're using elements from the really deep spiritual, the deep well of music, which is symphonic and jazz. Those two key elements, and then you add in some, conceptual type, artistic type, all these this amalgam of just all these arts all thrown together, photography and painting and, literature and storytelling and just, mythology and whatever the fuck, and you throw it into this big bucket and make this big brew. That's what constitutes progressive rock. And then you make a song that's 15 or 18 minutes long and throw in some bass clarinet and talk about a minotaur, and then you have it. It's magic. So thanks again for joining me, everybody. Short and sweet tonight. Just some more of my unpopular opinions. So if you don't like it, go fuck yourself. If you like it, keep tuning into my channel. I'll keep trying to be creative and post new things. I'll be putting up a new Tinkle Tunes episode here pretty soon. It's getting close to the end of the year. I've got a list of my favorites of 2021. Look forward to that. Got lots more albums, got lots more to talk about. So, don't forget about me. I'm here. So, hope you're having a happy holiday. And be good to each other. I love you all. Peace be with you.